All right, good morning, everyone. We're so glad you're here today. Thank you for joining us. I hope everybody's safe and well. Please share your information via chat. We want to give you a chance to get to know each other. And again, every fourth Friday of the month, we go ahead and we do a networking session so you can get to know each other in person. Please join us if you can for that. I'm so excited that Mick Cornett, the author, and he's an author and a very popular four-term mayor of Oklahoma City, is joining us today. We're in webinar format so that we can tape the program. And again, we've had up to 1,000 people watch it after the fact. So people tend to watch it when they can. So Purse Power is working to help women use their massive purchasing power to drive positive change. We believe that if women, who make 80% of all purchasing decisions, would choose to buy from the companies that actively promote women, and we would do that in mass, and if we could create a funding stream for battered women's shelters in the process, we could shatter glass ceilings and change lives. So that's what Purse Power is trying to do. And we started these calls at the beginning of the pandemic as a way to connect women business owners and leaders with each other, provide support, bring in best practice thinkers, and that's who we've got today. And it's just been a really enjoyable experience. Okay, so many thanks to Jane Benkendorf with BF Farms for sponsoring the program today. Jane's farm and ranch has been in the family for 100 years. It's amazing. They're not only local, they raise cattle and sheep who are 100% grass-fed, no grain whatsoever. And the meat is tender, delicious, and healthy. And my family has bought some meat from her, and it is wonderful. It has no antibiotics, no steroids, and no GMOs. As you're going to hear, Mayor Mick had a huge impact on the health of Oklahoma City, and Jane and BF Farms are also all about health. You can find BF Farms at bf-farms.com. Right, Jane?
That's right.
Okay, anything else you want to add?
That pretty well says what we need to say. So Mick can take it away, huh?
Okay, sounds great. Okay, so this is the way this is going to go. I'll introduce Mick. Again, please share your comments via chat. Ask questions later in the broadcast with the Q&A block at the bottom of your screen. And let me go ahead and tell you about Mick. So Mick is amazing. He, again, is the former mayor of Oklahoma City, and he is the author of The Next American City. And he was just telling us that there's worldwide interest in that book and what he's saying. He believes in a future where cities of modest size but outsized accomplishment, who have a can-do spirit and that value compromise over confrontation and progress over politics, are really the cities leading the way in the future. And I couldn't agree more. Newsweek magazine called him one of the 5 most innovative mayors in the United States, and Governing magazine named him National Public Official of the Year. He is a visionary. He was named as the Thinkers, Doers, and Visionaries Transforming American Politics in 2015 by Politico. And he was the president of the U.S. Congress of Mayors from June of 16 to 17. He is one of the most innovative public sector leaders in the country and is on our show today. So I'm thrilled to death. Thank you for being here, Mick.
Oh, thank you for asking me, Donna.
Okay, all right, my pleasure. To begin, we always want to learn more about you. Could you please give us a little bit about your backstory? How'd you arrive at this place in your life and career?
Okay, well, I grew up in Oklahoma City in the suburbs of Putnam City. Grew up wanting to be a television sportscaster, and went to college at OU and did that for 20 years. Most of that took place at the ABC affiliate in Oklahoma City, KCO Channel 5. After the Oklahoma City bombing, I kind of went through kind of some soul searching and trying to decide what I wanted to do with the second half of my professional life. And although I don't know that I could have verbalized it then, looking back, what I was really wanting to do was to make a difference, and didn't really know what that looked like. But I had a boss who happened to be a woman who assigned me to go cover City Hall. And I remember how disappointed I was. I was wanting to cover the state legislature, and of course, she was the boss. She won. I went to City Hall to go to cover city politics, and even in that first meeting, I fell in love with it. And it was interesting because back at the TV station, people thought covering City Hall was about the worst assignment a person could get. What could be more boring than a city council meeting was kind of the thought process. And how are you going to make an interesting story out of what goes on there? But what I saw was that here were some passionate people coming to city council meetings asking for something, and they were standing right in front of their elected officials. It wasn't like Congress in Washington, where you're so removed from the process, or even the state legislature, where the doors are closed and they discuss things themselves. In a city council meeting, the people are right there. And you see your elected officials at the grocery store, or at the convenience store, or wherever. I mean, they can't hide.
Hmm.
I thought, this is where you can make a difference. And so I soon left television, started my own business, a video production company, and then ran for city council. Was successful, and then the mayor's job opened up 3 years later, so I ran for the open seat and wound up being reelected 3 times.
Wow, that is amazing. That is amazing. Is that the longest history, longest tenure in the state of a mayor?
It's the longest in Oklahoma City's history.
Mm-hmm.
Longest serving mayor. That's right.
Wow, that's great. That's great. All right. So tell us about that transition from going from a television personality to a successful politician. What did it take to make that transition?
Well, some of the similarities in that, I've always been a public figure. I was 21 years old when I got my first TV job. I was, started really young. And so, I don't really know what life is like, in a kind of a position where where you don't have to watch what you're doing and who you are. I mean, the TV station, expects you to act appropriately, and you got to always, I'll call it, be on.
Right, always on stage.
Face on.
Yeah.
And so, so that part was pretty similar. Really, though, I think city government is a lot about neighborhoods, and it's about listening to people and making sure that people's voices get expressed. Because what you typically hear from a person who's disgruntled is that they didn't listen.
Yeah.
I wanted to make sure that I always listened, and even if I knew it was going to be in a losing cause, I expressed their views in the council meeting. So they left there thinking they got heard.
Very good.
And I thought that was especially important if I figured they weren't going to get what they wanted. But don't let them leave thinking that nobody heard what they felt or what they thought. And then becoming mayor was obviously a much bigger step, but my background in television was very helpful in that, because I had covered so much sports, I'd been to every high school, and as a result, I felt like I knew somebody from almost every neighborhood in the city, and I kind of had some perspective of what it was like to live there. And so there was hardly ever an issue that would come up that I was completely oblivious about. I'd been on that street, or I'd been in that neighborhood, or I knew someone at that school. And it kind of, I think, was a level of connectivity that gave me a big advantage.
I'll be darned. Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I want to talk about your book because I'm really fascinated by that. So the book is called The Next American City, and we need to come together as a country. I mean, the political divisions in this country are just tearing us apart from my perspective. And it sounds like you think mid-sized cities can lead the way.
Well, yes, what we're seeing, and kind of the basis of the book, and the reason there's appeal outside of Oklahoma City, is because there's this national trend of highly educated young people being less enchanted with living on the East or West Coast, especially in the larger cities.
Mm-hmm.
Different set of values in which they appreciate things like low cost of living, a lack of traffic congestion, fresh water and clean air. And those things are pretty much taken for granted in a lot of the mid-sized cities around the country. And most of those are in the middle of the country. So think Des Moines or Little Rock or Albuquerque, Omaha, cities sort of similar in size to Oklahoma City, but a little bit off the beaten path. And they might be, discounted on the East and West Coast as flyover country. But this group of young people really thinks there's a higher quality of life there, and they're moving in record numbers. And so the book notes, and the person that kind of helped inspire me to write the book, Jason White, who's a friend of mine, he said there is no better example of this than Oklahoma City. And that's why this needs to be your book, because it's not just happening in Oklahoma City, but no city has come as far as fast as Oklahoma City has. and has gotten on the radar screen of these young people who are looking for a place to live and where they can find their American dream, whatever that might lead to.
Mhm. I'm sure the pandemic is driving it too, faster than it even was before.
Well, yes, I believe right. People are taking stock of their lives. You know, they've had a year of
Mhm.
introspective time, um, and and so yeah, coming out of that, they're thinking to themselves, "I'd like a job where I can live anywhere." And where do I want to live? Where do I want to raise my family?
Right.
And so when you start putting those things in perspective, mid-sized cities like Oklahoma City or Tulsa are starting to have more and more appeal.
Mhm. Now, how about this political division thing in the United States? Do you think that this factors in somehow as well, or no?
Um,
In that
well,
it's,
I
go
don't
ahead.
know that it factors in, but it's certainly kind of I think it's the conversation that most people, you know, want to have. And when they look nationally at where the country is and what's going on, you know, they can't separate the politics from it.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, in general, what you've got here is you've got people on the far edges of politics, the far left and the far right.
Mhm.
And the reason they've got so much political sway is that they are very passionate about voting. And so
Mm.
even though you may have a large number of people in the middle who are disenchanted with the far left and the far right and just want people to get along, those people, because of their discontent, are less likely to vote.
Mm.
And so I think most people in this country are in the center. Most people in
Mhm.
Oklahoma are probably center right.
Mhm.
But politically, sometimes it looks different in our elected bodies because the most passionate people are at the far left and the far right. That group of passionate centrists hasn't yet come to fruition.
And it needs to. It needs to. Just for reference, purse power is not political at all. We want to be about all women and men too, by the way. Um, do you think that women have any role to play in this transition in terms of, you talked about the leadership, you talked about getting things done, not letting the political divisions stand in the way. I mean, what role can women play in this?
Well, you mentioned earlier that women are spending the most money, and well,
Yeah.
they also can help, you know, lead a more, you know, higher level of citizenship in their own families, making sure that others in their immediate families and extended families can get out and vote. So, I mean, I think women more than anyone else can encourage people to get out there and speak their mind and make sure that they're registered to vote and vote,
Mhm.
and explain how important it is. You know, I think the opinion of a matriarch in a family is the strongest opinion there is in that family. I mean, I see that over and over.
Mhm. Mhm.
It certainly was the case in my family. I mean, my
Yeah.
mother was a first grade teacher, you know, who grew up on a small farm, grew up during the Depression. But the values that I have today, you know, are her values, and
Right.
that wasn't intentional. I just see it when I look back at her life and I examine the things that I believe, and I think, well, I guess that's not an accident.
Yeah. I remember you saying something similar to that at the Journal Record Awards for Women, that she had been a huge influencer in your life.
Hmm.
Which is, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. She was an amazing woman who saw a lot of things, and indirectly, I don't remember her ever saying this, but indirectly, she taught me that I could become anything I wanted to be.
Mhm.
You know,
Mhm.
that was up to me.
Right.
Um, and you know, you don't have anyone else to blame or to credit, but get out there and make your own way, and you know, determine what you want to do in life. Take charge of your life.
Yeah, absolutely. It is up to you. Okay, so you at one point decided to get healthier and you brought the city along with you.
Yeah.
So I want you to tell the story of this city's going on a diet.com and what enabled you to galvanize Oklahoma City to lose 1,000,000 pounds.
Well, I mean, and that was not only a personal journey, but a journey that I took the city on as well. So, you know, I wasn't a person who knew a lot about health or issues. You know,
Mm.
maybe you know, if I had 10 priorities in my life, you know, health just never seemed to surface. And you know, when you become mayor, you know, all of a sudden people are asking you about the poor health of Oklahomans and people in Oklahoma City, and you know, I
Yeah.
didn't know how to respond. And then you know, it came at a time when I was trying to get people in Oklahoma City to realize the potential of the city, and so I was talking about things like, hey, man, we're on a lot of great lists. Best city to start a business, best city to get a job, and all these lists. And we hadn't been on a lot of lists before. So, I mean, it was kind of a big deal that we were getting noticed. And then came out this list of the most obese cities in the country. And there we were. I think we were number 2, on that list.
Oh.
And I didn't know what to say or do, and I was embarrassed by it. And then I got on the scales and realized that I had been gaining weight because everybody wants to feed the mayor. And I had gained about 10 pounds the first year I was mayor, and another 10 pounds the second year. And as a result, I thought, well, here I am, trying to be a better reflection of the city, and I'm an example of the city's problem. And so I started losing weight. I'd lost weight before. I had kind of had a personal history of gaining 2 or 3 pounds a year and then pulling it off every 10 years or so.
Yeah.
So I knew I
Same
could lose
here.
weight. And so I lost a pound a week for about 40 weeks. So I lost 40 pounds.
Wow.
And while I was losing weight, I started examining the city as to why we might have an obesity crisis in Oklahoma City. And I realized that we had built an incredible quality of life if you were a car. It seemed like every decision we made was about the automobile, and we had really, big streets, and it was really important that there was no traffic congestion and that people could drive fast. And, you didn't really go anywhere without your car. I mean, the idea that you might walk somewhere was like a foreign language, to someone like me who had grown up in the suburbs, and, just walking just wasn't one of the thought processes. And I realized that the other aspect of it, even though I didn't know how to solve it, I thought, we're not talking about it because obesity is kind of an uncomfortable issue. People don't really want to talk. They don't think it's polite, to talk about obesity. And I could see that this idea that pretending it's going to go away on its own, if we just ignore it, wasn't going to work. I mean, what we were doing wasn't working. And so I thought, well, I'm going to force a conversation. I'm gonna force everyone in this city to think about obesity and talk about it for the very first time. And I thought, I'm gonna go to the zoo, stand in front of the elephants, and announce that I'm putting the entire city on a diet. And
You did.
it worked. Yeah, it was a stunt, more than anything else, but it forced the conversation. That led to passing initiatives for health and science. I didn't see any of that on that first day. All I was trying to do initially was get a conversation going. And then ultimately that turned into a rebuild of all of our infrastructure to start building a city around people instead of cars.
I want you to share some of the lessons that you learned. I mean, how did you motivate that many people to take action? I mean, a lot of us want to do things for our own businesses and otherwise to get people to do something. How did you do that?
Well, I had a gentleman who was in the private sector who was willing to fund a website for the project called thiscityisgoingonadiet.com. He had a person who was willing to kind of run the website, and we had a counter on it. So we knew how many people had signed up and pledged to lose weight. And then the idea was people would go there and tell us how much weight they had lost. And I mean, people started signing up, and then I wound up on national television shows. I was on the Ellen DeGeneres show, one morning. And I think the next day, I think we had 10,000 visitors to the website. Wow. And ultimately, over 4 years, we lost 1 million pounds. 47,000 people had logged on and pledged to lose weight. And so, looking back, because that was between 2008 and 2012, looking back on it, what I can say, I can't tell you that we were 1 million pounds lighter, because there could have been 47,000 other people who gained 1 million pounds, and probably were. But what I can tell you that it was an opportunity for us to build awareness on an issue. And as an awareness campaign, it was highly successful. In that period of time, you could not live in Oklahoma City without knowing the mayor had put the city on a diet.
Yeah.
Everywhere I went, people were looking at what I was eating. It was like I had this entire city of people looking over my shoulder to see.
That would help with the diet.
Right. It helped me. I told you I had lost quite a bit of weight during that process, and took off like the last 5 or 10 pounds after it had started. But the another big help was the media. The Oklahoman on page 2 immediately started using the counter and telling how many people had signed up and how much weight had been lost. And so a lot of politicians, announce some initiative and then it goes away in about 24 or 48 hours because,
Mhm.
it doesn't have legs. Well, the media kept it going. And I had a background in the media, so I knew the type of stories that the media would need to be able to keep it going. And so I would hold
Mhm.
press conferences in which, for instance, when we had reached 250,000 pounds, I stood in front of 2 large airplanes that weighed 125,000 pounds each,
Ah.
the Air National Guard.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
and so then we would bring people to these events who had lost significant amounts of weight. Well, the
Mhm.
media love weight loss stories.
Yeah.
And so these people had their lives changed. Some families had lost 100 pounds, combined. And so the media loved those stories, and that allowed us to keep it front and center. And
Mhm.
so it's one thing to get some attention on one day, but media cycles are short. And if you're trying to make a cause or to even promote your business on a long basis, you got to have a plan for how you're going to keep this going. And we were able to do that for the 4 years. And as you just illustrated, we're still talking about it.
Yeah. Amazing. The other thing I'm hearing you say is you made it tangible. So you gave them physically what this represented in terms of the weight, or the families talking about what they'd lost.
Mhm.
Um,
I was trying to make it fun because losing weight
mhm.
is not fun.
Yeah.
I mean, being a person that is, feel like they're always on a diet, it's very personal, can be very defeating. You get on the scales and you think you've probably lost a couple of pounds and you've gained a pound. Who hadn't been there? And so I thought, what we want to do is have an entire city that's kind of be a support system.
Mhm.
Uh,
Mhm.
and so, people that were trying to lose weight, they didn't feel like they were all alone. Because
Mhm.
usually when you're losing weight, you feel like it's you against the world, and no
Yeah.
one knows how hard this is. But here we had an entire city that was kind of your cheerleader.
Yeah. I think it's time for round 2. I mean, I don't know about you, but during the pandemic, a lot of people have gained weight, including me. Okay. All right. So you were honored as one of the leading mayors in the world and were named by Newsweek magazine as one of the 5 most innovative mayors in the United States. You also acted as the president of the U.S. Conference of Mayors. What are some of your biggest innovations that you drove, and what were your secrets to success?
Well, one thing I like to point out to illustrate what the answer to the question is that it's not that I'm more enlightened or that I'm, more powerful. In fact, the mayor of Oklahoma City is not a very powerful position structurally. It's that we figured out how to pay for stuff. We figured out how to get things done. And, my life is all about getting things done. I generally don't talk about something until we've done it. Because, talk from a politician is pretty cheap,
Mm.
and
Mhm.
it,
Mhm.
so we like to draw attention to other people after there's been some success. But to answer your question, I think what we did after the weight loss challenge of passing MAPS 3, which was to get a new convention center and a new park downtown, a new streetcar system, some improvements at the rowing and canoe and kayak facility, a new expo center at the fairgrounds, and then significantly changing the fabric by building sidewalks and jogging and biking paths,
Mhm.
and getting all of that paid for with cash, with no debt. And so all of that is to say that while other cities are trying to figure out how to do things, we were
Mhm.
doing it
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
standing on the shoulders of my predecessors who had done incredible things. I mean, the mayors that came before me really set the stage for us to be so successful during my tenure.
Mhm.
Because they had addressed the urban core and the needs to kind of build downtown. They had addressed some of the urban school issues on the capital side. We built an entirely new school system, and so when you're addressing downtown and you're addressing education, if you've got those as your building blocks, then you can stand from there and start saying, well, what else can we do? And I believe this is true, and I mentioned it earlier, that no city came as far as fast as Oklahoma City.
Mhm.
And partially that's because we had a long way to go. I mean, the city that I lived in 1990 was a pretty dreadful place. I mean, we thought at the time it was a good place to live and good place to raise a family, but we knew people didn't want to come visit, Oklahoma City. We were pretty aware that, you didn't plan your vacation to come. Well, think now, I mean, tourism is one of our leading industries.
Mhm. Mhm.
And what I saw was we had 3 interstate highways that came through Oklahoma City, and we didn't give people any reason to stop.
Ah,
They just drove right through, and they, might turn their head, just to see what the city was as they drove through at 80 miles an hour. What we've done is we've taken an opportunity for tourism and built things that are reasons to pull off the interstate and spend some time.
mhm. Well, I'm a transplant from Colorado and I love it here. I just love it. Love the people, love the state. You talked about, I'm interested in the innovation in terms of the future and any opportunities you see for women. So given the innovation you've been through, the innovation that you've driven, what do you see coming? And are there opportunities for women there?
Well, I mean, what I think is coming is first of all, it's on the connectivity and the communication side.
Mhm.
I mean, because delivering a message and determining how to deliver a message is a pretty universal thing if you're going to be successful in a business, or if you're leading a religious organization. I mean, it doesn't really matter. If you're going to be a leader, you've got to think about how you're going to communicate your message, and if you're going to get followers or if you're going to get customers.
Mhm.
So because communication is changing so quickly, with all the social media platforms and digital platforms, and I do, PR and digital marketing work for Jones PR, which is a woman-owned,
Mhm. Brenda.
in Oklahoma City. Yeah. This is the 20th anniversary of Brenda's company.
Mm.
And so I mean, that's what I see. I think a lot of CEOs and people that run companies, they're good at something and probably at the core of what their business is about. But so much of the success of their business is based on their ability to communicate to their customers or
Yeah.
their employees.
Mm.
And so being able to communicate efficiently and effectively, I think is a fundamental of what separates, a business and an idea from another one. I think we've all seen examples of something, that kind of falls into that. And if we're thinking about our customers as highly educated 20-somethings, which is the group that's moving into Oklahoma City right now, I mean,
Mm.
the platforms that they consume information may be different, this year from last year. And when I was a kid growing up in Oklahoma City, I mean, if it was on the 10 o'clock news or if it was on the front page of the paper, you kind of felt like everybody knew it. I mean,
Mhm.
because everybody consumed, at least those 2 media things.
Same.
Well, now, I mean, no 2 people consume information the same way. And so it's difficult. It takes a professional team to kind of figure out how to market or communicate, each individual business. I just don't think it's as easy as, putting a sign on the door front and thinking people are going to stop in, to just to grab an old model. And the other thing on technology that people
Mm.
should be thinking about, and this is a little bit further out, but the autonomous vehicle is coming, and nothing is going to change a city, and nothing is going to probably affect our lives more than the idea of computers and robots driving us around and moving. So we will no longer be driving cars. And I think we'll first see that on moving freight on our interstate highways here. We'll certainly see that in the next few years. How long it takes to integrate, driverless cars into the fabric of a daily life, that remains to be seen. I think that'll take place slower than longer, but we're going to see it in our lifetime.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that will just drastically change the way that we conduct our lives in cities that had been built around the automobile.
Boy, absolutely. That's a good thing to be thinking about in terms of your business and the impact and how you can take advantage of that change.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, very good. Okay. All right. One more question, then you guys can ask your own. Go ahead. Sorry.
So it's all really a part of the shared economy.
Mhm.
The younger people, they're less interested in owning stuff,
Mhm.
whether it's place to live or a car or whatever it is, they don't necessarily see the need to own it when they can just borrow it or use someone else's, and pay for what they need, as opposed to making a big expense for something that doesn't isn't utilized very often.
Wow. Wow, that's going to change us tremendously, isn't it? Okay, guys, I want you to come up with your questions, start putting them in the Q&A block, and I'm going to ask him one, and then we'll come to you. So you're pretty good at bringing disparate stakeholders together, in my experience of you. For example, you brought the NBA team to Oklahoma City, and that had to take really sophisticated collaboration, negotiation. Can you talk about that and any key learnings you had from that?
Well, yes. What I mentioned earlier, my predecessors had done some really good work. And when I became the mayor, I realized that someone needed to get out and tell the story. And so I started traveling around the country speaking about Oklahoma City and the benefits of investing there and moving there and visiting there and all these things. And I could see that when I just mentioned the words Oklahoma City, and this is a 2004, 2005 timeframe we're talking about, people immediately gravitated toward the 1995 bombing of the Murrah building.
Yeah.
And they felt sorry for us. But they couldn't get those images out of their mind at that time. And I thought, how are we going to build an economy on sympathy? I mean, the city's ready to move on from this and to build a really strong economy. And I felt like we had a wounded brand. And anybody that's watching this knows how important the brand is to their business. Well, Oklahoma City's brand had been branded by tragedy. And so I felt like the best way to improve the brand was to get a pro sports team. And so I flew to New York to start visiting with the commissioners in the NBA and the NHL. And a lot happened after that, but basically what that led to was an NBA franchise that carries Oklahoma City in its name. And so now nationally, when people think of Oklahoma City, there's a much better chance they'll have a positive image because of the basketball team, but because of other things we've done too.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Susan Cheers is asking, what steps did the city take to encourage people to get more exercise as a part of the weight loss initiative, i.e. more walking, less reliance on cars, et cetera?
Well, we built sidewalks, first of all. And for a lot of people that had lived in Oklahoma City a long time, they thought I kind of lost my mind with the hundreds of miles of sidewalks. And I'll give you a perfect example. My brother, who I'm really close to, he lives in the suburbs, basically, same background as me. And he said, when you were building those sidewalks through my neighborhood, I was just kind of shaking my head because he was under the impression that we don't need sidewalks because no one walks. And my whole point was, well, they don't walk
because there's no sidewalks.
So when I told him that, he kind of, okay, he's going to be a little more open-minded. And they say he couldn't wait to tell me the first day the sidewalk opened, he saw a woman pushing a stroller toward the shopping center, that was half a mile away, but you could never have walked there before. Yeah. There wasn't a way to get there without driving a car. Well, suddenly, she was walking. And so I think most people now see the sidewalks are used, but that's how we did it. I mean, you can't, so much of exercise is built around the fact that we spend so much of our time in the car. And young people that are now choosing where they want to live, health is very important to them. And if you're a community that doesn't seem to value health, you're going to have a tougher time getting those people to locate in your city.
Absolutely. Well, the other thing I've experienced working from home all day with Zoom is now I'm feeling bad about sitting all day long. Getting out for a walk is huge. Yeah. Okay. Other questions, guys? Okay. Well, they're coming up with other questions. I want to ask you about any challenges you faced and how you overcame them. So you've had a ton of success, but we've all faced challenges as well. And I'd like to hear about your toughest challenges and what you learned from that, how you overcame them, what you learned.
Well, certainly while I was the mayor, you have good economic times and bad economic times. I remember, how rough it was in 2008 and 2009. And Oklahoma City's economy up until just very recently has been so reliant on the oil and gas industry. And that's an industry that has its ups and downs.
Oh, yeah.
So, you try to figure out what can you get accomplished in the good times and what can you still get accomplished in the weaker economic times? Because, there are still needs, but, you deal with labor unions and you deal with a lot of personnel issues, and being able to, explain the tough times that the city is facing, but also to say, what can we do that's positive, even though we don't have the money we had last year?
Mhm.
What can we do? And I remember one year, I thought to myself, you know what, we have never really taken advantage of the fact that Route 66 comes through Oklahoma City.
Mm.
You'll go through smaller towns in Oklahoma and you'll see that they're very proud of the route, and they'll be building things because they're on Route 66. And I felt like Oklahoma City has never really taken advantage of that. And so, we make our own signs. We have our own sign shop at the city. Let's start doing some Route 66 stuff. That didn't cost us anything.
Mhm.
And so, I think that's an example of how you can, do something that might have a long lasting impact, and encourage tourism, which is a great way to build the economy, in a time when you can't exactly go out and do some of the really fun things that you can do when there's extra revenue in the bank.
It's interesting because I think the point that you made that I think is transferable to women business owners and business leaders is you took what you had and figured out how to capitalize on it, right? During the
Right.
tough times.
And another thing, you mentioned challenges. I should probably point out, and I don't know where I got this from. Maybe it was from my mother, but I've decided early on in my professional career, back in my 20s, that I was not going to live a life where I had a list of people I liked and a list of people I didn't like.
Mm.
That I was only going to have one list. And if I knew you, if we had some sort of friendship or relationship, you were not, I was not going to allow, kind of to put a person on a list of things that I didn't want to see there. I didn't want to talk to them. And that was very beneficial as mayor, because, sometimes people get ostracized, or they have done something in their past and people are distancing from them. And I felt like, when you're the mayor, you've got to allow everybody to be able to come into your door and be a part of something positive going forward.
Mhm.
And no matter what somebody said to you or did to you or did to the city, you got to have an open door for that person coming back. And I think that's really served me well professionally. To
Yeah.
not, I thought also, as an elected official, why do I need enemies? I mean, what good is that going to do?
You're
And
right.
so I've just tried to live a life without enemies, and try to make sure that everyone knows that I'll treat them honestly and fairly. And what they've done in the past, or what they've been accused of in the past, doesn't matter to me.
Yeah, I hear you. It's interesting. So I'm a former executive coach. I did HR for 30 years, and you get people that are experiencing the same thing very, very differently. And people tell themselves stories about other people's behavior all day long, every day, and they treat it as if it's true. And in reality, it has to do with having a difference in perspective. So I like that a lot. I mean, trying to really understand also where the other person is coming from, rather than making them wrong or bad or all these other things.
Absolutely, you've nailed it.
Yeah. So Jane's having trouble with the questions here. She's just saying that they've got customers, the meat customers who are coming to them, or moving to Oklahoma City. And I think that makes sense too, is these younger people, I've got 3 of them, are interested in that clean eating and the healthy eating, and they can provide some support there.
That's right, and they're willing to put forth an extra effort, whether maybe it's a slightly higher price, or maybe they have to drive to a different place, but they're willing to exert extra effort to live a healthier life. They see value in that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, so Case Lane is asking, with this movement of young professionals to small cities, what type of business opportunities are there for women who may be interested in creating a business aimed at this group? So the young people that are moving.
Well, I mean, I think one of the best ways is to pay attention and talk to the young people.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're not shy. They'll tell you if there's a special need in your community. But they spend a lot of time valuing experiences.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember I was visiting with some young people, and I was wanting to talk about Route 66, and I thought, I wonder if that's just an out of date type scenario. Should I spend some time on that, or should I just let that go? It's kind of our grandfather's era.
Yeah.
And what I learned from them is, no, they're about experiences. So if you're holding a festival, these young people, 20s and 30s, and the millennials and the group before them or after them, they're all about, going to a festival or spending some time out. So um, they're less interested in acquiring stuff
Mhm.
and more interested in acquiring memories and experiences.
That is a really useful comment. Thank you.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense.
And so think about that,
Mhm.
I've been, I'm not a hoarder, but I'm a collector. And
I can see behind you. Yeah.
it's hard for me to throw things away. It's not my instinct. I might
Mhm.
do that someday, or that's, might be of value. And, I try to get better and better at that. But I think that's generational. And I sense that my children and people that are out there that are in their 20s and 30s, they don't see they don't see the advantage of keeping a bunch of stuff. They live in a disposable world.
Mhm.
They,
Mhm.
where if your watch breaks, you throw it away. Well,
Right.
you're up in a world where if your watch broke, you took it to the watchmaker to have them fix your watch. I
Right.
mean, but people, your TV breaks now, you throw it away. You don't call the TV repairman like you did when I was a kid.
Mhm.
Um, and so,
Mhm.
I mean, so they've grown up in this disposable world. So when you're thinking about consumer habits and opportunities, be thinking of that.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. It's interesting. What was going on in my head as you were talking is the depression and my mother talking about what they did to reuse everything. And I was thinking about the pandemic and what it's going to drive behaviorally for us. I wonder.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's a lot about relationships. I think people value relationships more, going
Mhm.
through that, kind of healthcare crisis that the nation went through.
Yeah.
It may have moved the value meter, a little bit more toward family and close friends.
I bet it did. I bet it did. And then this other piece about Zoom meetings everywhere, being able to work wherever you want to work. That's something else too. Going from the places where they don't have a great quality of life to places where they do, which comes back to you and your small mid size cities.
Right. Yeah. And people learn that, life's short. You might as well live where you want to live.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
people are making different priority decisions.
Yeah, they sure are. They sure are. Okay. All right. We're just about done, guys, here. Any other questions? Go ahead and throw them up here. All right. So I wanted to find out from you at the end of the day, what do you want people to really have learned from you? You got a ton of experience. You've been highly successful. What do you want us to have learned from you?
Oh gosh. Well, I hope well, okay, because most of the people that watch this have some sort of leadership tendency, I'm
Mhm.
assuming. Uh, I would challenge people to do things that are hard.
Hmm.
What I always tell myself is, look, there's always some easy tasks that are out there that are in front of you. Somebody else will do those. But if you're going to try and do something that's hard. And you know, I look back on my life, and choosing a career in television was hard. I mean, hardly, less than 10% of the people that wanted to get those jobs when I was doing it got one. And I
Mhm.
was just so determined that I immediately said, well, I feel sorry for those other 9 out of 10 because I'm going to get one. I was so determined.
Good
And
for you.
I had no reason to have that level of confidence. There was
Mhm.
nothing special about me or my education. I was just determined.
Determined.
And, and then, choosing to run for city council and choosing to run for mayor. I mean, those are not easy things.
Mhm.
Um, and I'm not suggesting that people need to run for elected office or anything like that, but what I'm suggesting is that there are always things in your life in front of you think, well, that'd be really hard. And I would challenge people to try and take on those tasks, because we need people that are willing to take on things that are hard.
Mm.
And just step back and let other people do the easy things, and choose to do the things that are really going to make a difference and make a positive change in their life, for their family, or for someone else. But let's do things that are hard, because that's where you get the real, I think that your confidence grows, and you just kind of feel more worthwhile when you've accomplished something that was difficult.
Yeah. Wow. Thanks for that encouragement, because starting and running a business for everybody on the call is a very hard thing. So, and trying to make a difference, which is what we're trying to do with Purse Power.
Right.
Thanks for that encouragement. I think that
And
was
don't be
fantastic.
afraid of failure.
Mhm.
Uh, I mean, just move on and move on to something else. But most people that are reluctant to do something are afraid of failure.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you have to get over that. And
Yeah.
after you failed a few times, you'll probably be a little easier.
It's
But
okay.
yeah, there's
Well,
nothing wrong with failing. I mean, if read the life of Abraham Lincoln, sometimes you want to see a guy that failed over and over again, and yet today, he's considered, one of the greatest Americans of all time for what he accomplished. But he tried to do really hard things.
yeah.
That's why he kept failing so much.
I love that. I love that. I never wanted to look back at the end of my life and go, I could have, I should have, and I didn't,
Well, that's right. That's
you
right.
know? Yeah.
You'll have fewer regrets this way.
Okay, Elena Zucker is asking, in this polarized political environment, have you done anything to create a human dialogue between groups that have probably these disparate political views?
Yeah, what I try to do is to try and understand where people are coming from, because it's easy to discount political views that you don't believe in, and it's also easier to choose media that are going to agree with your views. In other words, I'm just
Right.
grabbing this because I know we don't want to make this political, but if you're very conservative, you might watch very conservative television shows, and your Facebook page is likely to be connected with other various conservative people and ideas. And the result of that is that you're not really exposed to people who believe differently or think differently. And it's harder to empathize with them. Even if you'd never believe what they believe, at least understand where they're coming from. I think that's very, very important. And try to expose yourself to beliefs that you don't agree with. It's not instinctual.
Yeah.
And the media is capitalizing on that, and that's why I think that's one of the reasons that the country's becoming so polarized.
No, I'm with you. I've got triplet 21-year-olds, and I constantly ask the other side, like, no matter whether I agree with them or not, I'm saying, what does the other side think? Why do they think that? We need to have more of the dialogue, to your point, not talking to the echo chambers, but let's talk to each other.
Yeah. That's right.
Okay. All right. Okay. I think that's it on the questions, unless somebody else gets in under the wire. Let's see here. Okay. So given everything we've talked about, what are 3 actions you want us to take?
Well, I would, I think if you're talking to business leaders, I would think, examine what's keeping you up at night. What are you doing at the end of the day, what did you not get done? And usually it's the same, falls in the same category. And outsource that. Don't let it keep you up at night, but obviously you're either not getting to it during the day, or you're not interested in it. It doesn't excite you, but it's important. And so outsource it, and find someone to help you in that regard. But if you're continually worrying about it or thinking it's a shortcoming, it probably is. But do something about it.
Yeah.
I don't know that people need advice from me, but I've always found that working on communicating is extremely important. Stay in touch with people. Handwritten notes matter, and rehearsing difficult scenarios. In other words, if you're going to talk to somebody and it may not be real pleasant, think about what you're going to say. Think about what the other person may say. Be prepared for very important conversations. Don't let every conversation just happen in real time. I rarely tell a story that I haven't rehearsed, because I want it to be fine-tuned, and I want the content to be meaningful, because I want people to listen. And so, be thinking about how you're going to communicate something or tell it, whether it's your kids or your spouse, or whether it's it's customers. But put some thought into the communication process, and important conversations. So you don't say something you didn't mean to say,
Yeah.
and you were able to make your point.
Excellent. That's a really good point. And you're a professional communicator. That's what you do really, really well. That's it. Any other points about that, about communication? Because I think you're right.
Well, I think just make sure you understand how important it is.
Yeah.
And believe it or not, I mean, there was a time in my life when I just was very afraid of public speaking.
Hmm.
I mean, I think back to, some of my, junior high days and things like that, and having to get up in front of people, how much it scared me. And then, in television, you're really not in front of a live audience. I mean, you have to pretend that camera is a person and be able to talk to a camera, but that's a lot different than being in front of people.
Mm.
And when I became mayor and all of a sudden, it was real people out there, I was scared again, but by doing it over and over again, you get better. And so, I mean, I think communication is so important that a lot of people shy away from conversations or speaking in front of groups. And I guess my advice is just keep doing it.
Yeah.
And it'll be easier and you'll get better at it. And yeah, you may think that you failed or you look dumb, but most people don't think poorly of you because you didn't do well in a public speaking performance. They just know that can happen and it could have been them. And so, people think that everybody's going to be talking about this for a week or two. Probably not. They'll probably forget about it in an hour.
Sure.
Don't beat yourself up over trying something that you were uncomfortable doing. Just try, do your best, and then learn from it.
Absolutely. Well, I took Dale Carnegie. I took the class like one time and helped teach it 3 times. And Dale Carnegie, one of the best speakers ever, started out stuttering or something. He had a really rough time and he just kept doing it and doing it and doing it. Got to be one of the best. Yeah. Very good. Okay. All right. Do you have any final thoughts to share? Anything else you want to say?
Well, I really, I mean, I know that the audience for this, goes nationwide, if not worldwide. But I really believe that, that the state of Oklahoma has great things ahead, and Middle America has incredible opportunities going forward.
Mm-hmm.
And I just challenge your audience to be looking for opportunities to make good things happen.
Absolutely. I love it. Love it. Very empowering, very uplifting. Thank you. I appreciate you being here. It's been amazing.
Thank you.
Amazing.
Thanks also to Jane for helping to sponsor this opportunity.
Absolutely, Jane. I was just going to say that. Thank you so much for sponsoring the program.
You're welcome. Glad to.
And everybody, her meat is delicious. I put her website on the chat. Please take note of it and order it, particularly if you're in Oklahoma. Can they order it if they're outside of Oklahoma?
No.
No? Okay, so just Oklahomans. Well, there you go. We get the good stuff. Okay, so upcoming guests, we've got Gail Messerman, Chief Service Officer with CareLoop, and they support people who are homebound with support. We've got a networking session on June 25th, and then I'm really excited about our guest on July 2nd. Gil Whitley Collins is coming. She's the author of Why Men Win at Work, and she's got some really insightful things to say. And it's not a negative thing about men. She's talking to women and how we can do better at work and get ahead. Please sign up for a directory listing if you haven't already at pursepower.com. And that's if your company has a female CEO or president, or is half owned by women, or has at least 20% women on their board. We have a new capability on our website where you can take a look at your website in cyberspace, as well as all your social media and everything else. And it'll give you some great feedback about what's going well or not so well. And it's free. So please take advantage of that. Let's see here. We're looking for sponsors for this program if you happen to have an interest. And please do download our Google Chrome extension from our website. It will show you which companies are women-owned or women-led, the ones in our directory, as you shop online. Let's see here. Please shop from women-owned and women-led businesses. I hope you like and share our social media pages. And please let your friends know about this webcast every Friday at 10 Central. Okay, any final words of wisdom? Mick or Jane, anything else you want to say? No?
No.
Okay.
Just get after it.
Get after it. There you go. All right, everybody, please remember, purse power, we have it. Let's use it. See you next Friday. Thank you. Take care, you guys. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.